Hello, I'm James Rogers, I'm 27. This is my studio in Brixton, South London. So I've been here for about 2 years now. I've got the studio to myself. It's third floor, Brixton. See the lovely windows here, look out directly onto Brixton High Street. This is my first studio since being in London. I moved down about 5-6 years ago from Wolverhampton. And since graduating, I've kind of been living and working out of different Guardian properties. But this was the first time that I had a different living space to working space. And there'll just be a few different processes happening at once in here, and that's really important because it forms new relationships, new overlaps. There's a kind of dialogue that starts to form between my drawings and my sculptures. And that's really that's brought on by my studio becoming a dumping ground of different books, different images, printouts, etchings. They all go alongside each other and they start to form interesting contrast, interesting dialogues with each other. This is a recent series of etchings consisting of 8 plates printed across cobalt and sanguine, some of which have been hand coloured. These initially began as copper plates. I 3D printed an arm that I attached to my 3D printer machine, then attached an etching needle to that, and I used this machine to draw into the copper plates. Alongside this, I would introduce hand-rendered mark making, as well as try to find the language of the machine through a series of glitches, disconnecting motors, and certain connections. So through this I'm trying to work out what happens to form and ideas and emotions as they move between the physical realm into the digital realm and vice versa. So this machine to the right of me is the third iteration of my own smaller DIY 3D printer. So I actually built my first one a few years prior to this, back when I was in Wolverhampton one summer. I discovered the RepRap project online. It was devoted entirely to distributing the information to be able to build, wire and use your own 3D printers at home. And I was really drawn to the way that it was removing itself from this hierarchical mode of distributing information through the top down into this potato field style of distributing information. And it was that they would go outwards, they would form their own nodes, and that would spread more. And this was happening. People were designing their own 3D printers, they were coming up with their own additions and changes and enhancements. That would spring up another node, and you would get these different nodes emerging, these fountains of information contributing to the community. And I was fascinated not only by its manufacturing qualities, but also the way it was able to embody this energy of community sharing and open source. And so the first one, I followed this manual online, how to build it yourself. I didn't have the funds to be able to buy a pre-made kit, so working with my dad, who was an electrician, we kind of went around Wolverhampton and we found various parts, we'd bring them back, I'd use these tools, I'd saw it, solder it together. And I ended up with this Frankenstein style machine that I just couldn't work. I was so confused, and I'd been working on it for days until about 4:30 a.m. one morning. I remember it so specifically, and I was at home and it just started printing a big plasticky mess, and I was so overjoyed that it had started printing. That was very much the start for me of this process, being introduced to not the beauty of these mirror finishes and this perfect like duplicate, which it has the capacity to do that, but I'm most interested in these unique qualities that can't be manufactured and copied any other process, and its real ability to be able to encapsulate the energy of our time. So behind me is a 3D printing machine that I've been building over the last year. Get down so out of the way. So this tank here, this is hung from my ceiling on a chain. I filled this up with porcelain, clay, whichever substance I want. At the moment I'm experimenting with porcelain because it's got excellent plasticity. I then hook this up to my air compressor, which is just down on the floor here. So I fill this up with porcelain. The air compressor will be providing pressure into here, between 2 and 4 bar depending on the viscosity of the clay. So the air compressor will be pushing the clay out, down, and then it will go into this extruder unit here. So this extruder unit I actually designed myself. Got it welded, following my design, effectively my blueprints. And then brought it back to the studio, and I've attached a motor, some other little bits and pieces, so that effectively as the porcelain is pumped into the extruding unit, the motor is able to synchronise with the computer to output a certain amount of porcelain depending on what parts of the machine it's building, and then the machine can move it across a certain toolpath, and we can begin sculpting directly into porcelain. So this sculpture down here began with a 3D scan of myself wearing the inflatable dinosaur costume. I then 3D printed it into porcelain using the machine and processes that I was telling you about. And it began with the study of Ingres's Roger, Free and Angelica, and then as I began to draw and sculpt with the images, I began to realise how it represents a strong man riding his valiant steed, like so many of the public sculptures we see. And obviously as the conversations around public sculpture begin to open up, we're questioning them, what they represent, even beginning to remove them. The ridiculousness that I began to associate with this turned to relevance, as I started to realise how ridiculous it is to portray a man so strong on his horse. Is that strength? Is that the values of masculinity that should be shown publicly? And ultimately, how those identities are being transmitted and curated across a digital and a physical world. And it's here that I find 3D scanning and 3D printing so interesting. Their ability to move form and ideas between digital and physical worlds. And in that translation process, there's a certain breaking up and glitching of the information. And sometimes those glitches, they can be that someone reads your text wrong and think you're ignoring them. There's a certain biological glitch and technological glitch that are happening, and they're forming new emotions and new qualities that are specific to this emerging landscape. So with my work, when I'm printing forms into porcelain and their arms are falling off, their legs are falling off, their heads are in different places, I'm hoping to remind individuals of a certain emotional quality that is present in this landscape and how it feels as an individual to navigate this world. We're trying to curate our identities online, we're trying to hide our anxieties, we're trying to move form between these two places. And if I do the same to my ideas, I believe I'll create a practice that's able to document and almost encapsulate this era and the emotions that exist as we begin to navigate through it. So this area of my studio here is generally where I do most of my drawing. It's also a bit of a dumping ground for lots of my images, as you can see. At the moment I'm working on a lot of these etching plates. So these are the ones that I've been printing that are on the wall that I showed you earlier. And I've just been working on these for the last probably few months, between here and Artichoke Print Studio. What I find so interesting here about it becoming a bit of an image dump is that strange relationships start forming between different pieces. For example, this piece here, I'd actually printed out an image of Wallace and Gromit wearing the wrong trousers, the ones that he can't control, and they take him on different journeys that he has no control over, no agency. And actually put it next to this piece here. And the way that the 3D printed layer and effects actually start to work, they started to mirror the same geometry of his kind of robotic trousers. And it just started me thinking about different myths and different narratives that I can connect these pieces to, and how the machines are almost revealing a certain language to me that I can find. I just need to trace it and work out the relationships that are there. So this shelf generally serves as a really good conversation point when people come by my studio for a studio visit, as it shows such a wide spectrum of my practice, because some of them have been so pivotal. One of which was really important, was this piece here. So for years I was trying to refine the 3D printing process to almost make it like perfect, in which case I was trying to get a smooth surface, no overhangs, no kind of strange geometry. And the more and more I worked to achieving this surface, I realised there was nothing specific about the model. It could look as though it was carved, it could have been cast, it could have been milled. There was nothing true about the manufacturing method that I'd used to create it. And then this piece happened here. The print completely fell apart. Her foot fell off. I think the layers started kind of completely fall apart into this almost like noodle chow mein style geometry. And I started to realise it was impossible to recreate this geometry by any other manufacturing method. So there was a real medium specificity here that was happening. I was creating effects that can't be replicated by any other manufacturing process. And for me, that was a really real pivotal point in my practice. Why am I trying to almost lie about the processes which I'm using? I'm using processes that are emerging to tell emerging stories. And why am I not honouring the effects of those materials? Thank you for coming by to the studio tour today. I hope you've enjoyed looking at some of the work, some of the processes and machinery that I have here. Thank you to the Net Gallery for inviting me and for your time putting this together. It's very much appreciated. And if anyone would like to come by and look at the studio, have a chat, see anything that I have here, you're more than welcome to reach out through the socials and come by. I'm just in Brixton, South London. But yeah, thank you. Stay safe, stay well.